and welcome back to the OperaWire podcast. I am here, your co-host David Salazar, alongside Francisco Salazar, who is co-host and co-founder of OperaWire. Fran, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Today has been a beautiful day. Opera is thriving in the world, and today we're the Opera International Opera Awards. So I just wanted to give a shout out to those winners. Esme Gregorian won Best Female of the Year. Marina Rebecca won the Reader's Choice Award. Nicholas Brownlee won the Male Singer of the Year, and the Theater Under Veen won the Opera Company of the Year. So it's wonderful to be able to see these opera companies being recognized and these singers being recognized for their amazing work.
Yeah, and since we last spoke, we've obviously had some great opera experiences. You went to see Arabella a couple of
I
days
did.
ago. I saw Don Giovanni last week at the Met. I think both of us came away very happy with our experiences, and you can check out our full reviews on operawire.com, of course. We got some news stories to get into today. So where do you want to start?
I think we should start on a really interesting, positive one. We got note this week that Denyce Graves is retiring from the stage, and it was kind of like not a surprise, but kind of amazing to see that an artist gets to really take ownership of her career in a way that we haven't seen before. We haven't seen not before, but in a few years. I think for a performer to announce they're retiring nowadays is not something that you hear or that they're able to say, this is my final performance. I feel like we don't get to see that anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I think was more from the fact that she's already like expanded her reach, right? We're seeing her playing more administrative role in some instances and educational role in other instances. I think she was also directing, if I'm not
She
mistaken,
did.
in
She just made her
another.
directorial debut at Virginia Opera.
So she's transitioning, and we've seen that transition, and that's what makes this kind of special. She's kind of like shifting her career on her own terms, and
Yeah.
you see other singers kind of do that gradually. But she was still going strong as a
Yeah.
performer. She'd been doing a couple of notable roles at the Met, and she's ending her. I think that's what really makes it extraordinary. She's claiming that final performance at the Metropolitan
Yeah.
Opera. A lot of times when singers retire from the stage and they announce their retirements, they haven't been at the biggest houses in some time.
Well, also it's because they're not, or they don't get to actually announce this is my final performance. And I think for Denyce Graves, her career, I don't want to say her career was at the Met, but a lot of her big moments were at the Met. Obviously, some of her greatest roles were Carmen and and Dalila and Samson and Delilah. You got to see her Carmen,
I got
and
to see her Carmen. I will never forget that. She stole that show. It was electric. It was the Zeffirelli production.
yep,
That was one of my first Carmens, and I
yep.
will never forget it because she was absolutely. I was like, who is this woman? She was incredible. Just stole every scene as a Carmen should, but she really was. She was special on that night.
Yeah. No, I mean, I was grateful to be able to see her in Marnie, not my favorite opera, and of course in the Hours. And I did see her in Porgy and Bess when she did perform the opening night in 2019. So maybe I'll go back and see this Porgy and Bess just to be able to say I got to see that performance.
Yeah, maybe. But it's really special. Congratulations to Denyce Grave on an amazing career on the stage, and
Yes.
obviously all the best as she moves forward and transitions into the next phase of her career. She's still building, she's still doing amazing things, and it's actually really exciting to hear. But I think there was news recently about her teaming up, the Denyce Graves Foundation teaming up with Opera for Peace
Yeah. Yes. Exactly.
for some initiatives as well. So she's clearly still going to be around, just she's going to be doing a lot of other things. And so congratulations to Denyce Graves on an incredible career as a performer.
Yes. And I think it's great that we're talking about the Met. So I think that there's a kind of interesting news that came out as well, and that was regarding the Met and Broadway shows and musicals. So a few days ago, the Metropolitan Opera announced that Sting was going to sing and was going to perform his newly adapted version of the musical The Last Ship. Those performances are going to happen on June 9th through the 14th, 9 performances. And well, this is not Sting's debut at the Met. He's performed there before. He did a concert in 2010. General manager Peter Gallup said, throughout its storied history, the Met has hosted performances by legendary artists outside the opera and ballet. Sting made his memorable debut in 2010, and we're thrilled to be Sting's theatrical home for this 9 fully staged performances in June.
Well, I think the Met needs to do these kinds of things. I
Yeah,
think it's going. I mean, at this point, the writing has been on the wall. We've talked to death about the current administration's inability to pull in ticket sales just through opera.
right.
We've seen hints. There's recitals and performances from crossover artists. We've
John
seen Andrea Bocelli,
Baptiste and John
John
Baptiste,
Baptiste. Right,
Christian Chenoweth, who was actually going to
right.
make her Met debut a few years ago, but that got canceled with this opera. And of course, Sandra Oh this year with La Fille de Regiment was also kind of like a little sprinkle of Hollywood and sprinkling of different types of crossovers.
But in terms of like actually renting out the venue, I think it makes sense. You have dead spots in the
Yeah.
summer. But obviously, you have to start thinking about the next season, and they might need that for preparation of productions. But I think it's smart that whenever they can bring in a different audience to the opera house, and obviously bring in whatever revenue comes with that from renting out the space. I mean, opera companies do that all the time. I mean, that's a
Yeah.
major model in other places. So I think it's really important. I think it's an important step for the Met to kind of do something along these lines because you want the company. I think it makes sense. It's not it might some people might look at it as, oh, the Metropolitan Opera is not just going to be about opera anymore. But if we're honest, we live in a world right now where these, especially in the United States of America, companies don't have public funding. They're privately funded, financed, and they need to find different revenue streams. And renting out the space makes sense.
Well, I think also with bringing in musicals, I think this is something that we've been talking about. We've talked about this for a while now. I think like Chicago Lyric Opera of Chicago has done it over a few years, and I think bringing in specific artists who've also had some classical crossover, I think is really important. And I've always said, why don't the Met do West Side Story? It would be great. I mean, they would sell the house out or do it like a Candide. These are works that that not only bring in opera audiences, but they also bring in crossover audiences, and maybe that will help sprinkle in a new audience that will also be interested in coming to the Metropolitan Opera to see an opera. But I also
Yep.
think that there's been a conversation also regarding the new album by Rosalia and how she sprinkled in classical music influences into her new album Lux, and how this created a huge conversation about, is it opera, is it not opera? And I just think, who cares if it's opera or not opera? I mean, I think if a pop artist or someone like Sting is interested in bringing in work that has some classical references or that honors some type of operatic style but is not necessarily opera, I think it's really important. And it does help to maybe bring in a new audience. And I think for this production, they're bringing in 59 Studio, which has done a lot of Metropolitan Opera productions. So,
Hmm.
there is like, there is some type of crossover. And I think in a way, we shouldn't. I know there's gonna be audiences pushing back and saying, oh, like you said, like this is not for opera, and we've seen it with Bocelli, and we've seen it with John Baptiste, and we've seen it. But at the end of the day, I think this is all. Art should not be so segmented. I think we've gotten so accustomed to art is segmented, opera audiences and pop audiences and Broadway audiences, and it shouldn't be like that. Art should be able to flow within the same. It's kind of like what I've always said about the Grammy Awards. It's like, if we're a celebration of music, then we should be able to see on that hall, that evening ceremony, a fusion of different styles. So I think if the Met is trying to fuse musicals and crossover artists like Christian Chenoweth and John Baptiste, I celebrate that. I think it's really important, and I think that maybe, but maybe in the future we'll see a concert between Christian Chenoweth and Renee Fleming, or like we did with we saw with Kelly O'Hara. I think
Yeah.
that was something that that has brought in some new audiences.
And I think that I think that the one thing that people would counter argue is, oh, like if opera is everything, then opera is nothing, right? I think that's kind of the concern, and obviously that's a very conservative mindset too. What I think opera is. I think there's different periods of opera, just like there's different
Right.
periods of opera. I think there's different periods of in a modern context where we live, where everything kind of intersects. Look at film, right?
Hmm.
Look at the concept of encyclopedic film, for example, where something like Martin Scorsese's Wolf of Wall Street is just an
Right.
example, where you have a movie that has voiceover narration, breaking the fourth wall, newsreels, photography, and not, like, just imagine the world that we're moving into where you're kind of, now you have so much other kinds of filmic
Right.
qualities. And music is the same thing. And you have so much crossover now because we do live in a world where people interact with all different kinds of musical expression. And so in opera, I'm not too surprised to see more of a pop relation. And I do think that, I do think that it's important that opera companies look at themselves and say, okay, there's traditional opera,
Right.
right? Just like there's traditional film, there's traditional literature. But if we start kind of expanding how audiences think of opera, it might also kind of help them in, like, for example, bringing in Sting at the Metropolitan Opera. Is that going to automatically lead to people going to see La Boheme? Maybe not. But will it allow for an opportunity to open those doors for certain people? Why not? But you have to start kind of measuring out how you can keep that balance. And what's at stake here is obviously the Metropolitan Opera as an
Right.
institution itself, which has been losing money, has been struggling financially, and we've debated and we've talked about the reasons why that might be. And I think it's a positive development that at the very least they're thinking outside. I mean, I don't necessarily think this is like the most original idea because like you said, there's a lot of other companies that are actually incorporating musical theater into their seasons, like Lyric Opera of Chicago, and they've been doing that. But at the very least, for an opera company that has a budget of $400 million a year and has a lot of unions attached
Yeah.
to every movement that happens, at the very least, it's progress and it's opportunity. And I think it's great. I think it's
You,
great.
you know, it would be really great if the Metropolitan Opera brought Rosalia to perform her new album. That would be amazing.
That would be interesting. That would be interesting. But
Well, she
why
did
not?
record it with the London Symphony, so why not bring the Metropolitan Opera and bring Rosalia and do it? It'll be
Why
fun.
not? Why
Yeah.
not? Speaking about venues, so it's really interesting. We're going to transition from the Met, who made a really positive step toward doing something that will help its revenue stream over the course of its, hopefully long term, and it's a step maybe in the right direction. To a company that, or an or a performing arts center that's going backwards. And trigger warning, we're going to talk about the Kennedy Center right now.
So
So
I just also want to bring it as well is that we've reached out to the Kennedy Center multiple times for statements because I think it's really important that the Kennedy Center also gets their say and be
opportunity to
able to
respond.
opportunities to respond as well. And I I've tried to get actual comments from the president currently, Richard Grinnell, not the president, he's the executive director,
Director.
Richard Grinnell,
Mhm.
which at the moment we don't have any real statement from him. We have Twitter posts and we have press releases that really are not specific enough. So we've given their say. We don't want to be we're trying to be we're trying
Objective.
objective as possible, but this is what it is. So there was a report in the Guardian. It was not really a report, it was an interview that Francesca Zambella, the artistic director of the Washington National Opera, gave to the Guardian, and basically she said that the Washington National Opera is considering exiting the Kennedy Center because they're not selling as many tickets, and she also gave some really interesting stories about telling the Guardian that some people who used to go to the uh, to the Washington National Opera refuse to go until quote unquote the Orange Menace is gone. These are quotes from the Guardian, and that they've returned their programs with ripped up, and they've sent them to her. They said they will not return for the next 3.5 years. And they said that she's been on record by saying that boycotting is not the answer because it's hurting not only the organization but the performing arts. As some people have compared this to the rise of Nazism, some people have compared this to that if they support the Kennedy Center, they're supporting the current administration and the president of the United States. It's a really interesting interview. Definitely read it because I think it does hone in on the fact that there are people that are boycotting the Kennedy Center, the Performing Arts Center, because they don't feel at home anymore. Obviously, we saw that at the beginning of the announcement of the of the Washington National Opera, fellow travelers, the team of the fellow travelers, they decided to withdraw the opera because they didn't feel that the center is right for an LGBT opera. As we know, the takeover was due to a drag show or drag shows that they alleged were harming kids or whatever. So that was a very anti-LGBT statement. And a lot of people from the LGBT community, as I've said many times, they don't feel comfortable going to the Kennedy Center.
So, and in response to the story that we published, you received a statement from the Kennedy Center stating that
Okay.
the company looks forward to continuing in the Kennedy Center in the
Yeah.
years to come.
And that
Right.
was done by the president of the WNO Board of Trustees. So there clearly is two very
There's a disconnect for
yeah,
sure. And, the reality is this, the Kennedy Center has become politicized.
yeah,
People cannot say that it's not. The president of the United States decided that he was going to fire the entire board
yeah,
and place himself as the president of the board of directors and install people that are loyalists.
yeah,
And so for anyone here that is going to be upset or finds this incendiary to say, I'm not politicizing it. It was politicized. The
right,
moment that a government official, the president of the United States, decides to take over an arts institution, it is political. Because at
right.
that point, what can you expect from that arts institution? Are you going to expect that that arts institution is going to continue to be free? Or is it going to be something where he has a platform and an opportunity to express his views? Now, I'm not here talking about the president, his views, what I believe about him. I think you can read it between the lines. You understand where I stand. If you read my newsletters, you know where I stand. What I will say is that you can't expect people not to react the way they've reacted.
Exactly.
You cannot expect people that don't like this administration to not feel threatened because this is unprecedented, and the only other times we've seen this happen are in totalitarian governments. We can look at Russia. We keep talking about
Right.
Russia on this channel, on this podcast. And Russia is a very specific example of where you've seen it happen,
Hmm.
where Putin in his administration has control and has their hands in all of the artistic venues in Russia. And it's a propaganda machine for them.
Right.
We saw
Exactly.
with the Lawrence Brownlee situation where Lawrence Brownlee was supposed to sing over there, and then he canceled, and then they canceled the whole concert. Why? Why couldn't they just get a Russian tenor to sing? Because the whole point was to get the American guy to sing on the Russian stage, and once that fell through, the propaganda was done. So they don't care about the concert; they cared about the propaganda.
Right.
And
And I
that's
think
obviously my conclusion. Sorry, but that's where I think if you look at the situation in the Kennedy Center and why people are boycotting, why the WNO probably should leave, if I'm being honest. I think that if you're an arts organization right now, and it sucks because the National Symphony Orchestra has been there for 50 years and they're getting displaced for a couple of weeks. And the Washington National Opera has been there for many years. It sucks right now, but if you want to survive in an arts institution, you need to divorce yourself from that situation. You need to find a new home because people will see you're staying there as being supportive of the administration and
now
or
it's
of the regime.
Now, it's interesting to note, and because I just want to make it clear, Francesca Zambello did say that the new administration uh, does not have experience with the arts, but they did not veto any of her choices. That being said, the management did ask her to produce more popular works, which was kind of interesting because this season they're performing something like the Marriage of Figaro. It doesn't get any more popular than the Marriage of Figaro, and a couple of other, and Aida as well. I mean, those are two of the most popular works in the repertoire. They did have questions on casting, which I thought was really interesting. And Francesca Zambella, if I'm not wrong, said that they had they had a percentage of diversity that they wanted to obtain from their casting. So I thought that was also quite interesting. And they did ask to reduce the rate of their singers. And Francesca Zambello in the interview did say that a lot of the singers that they cast are rising stars. So it can't get any more cheaper. And most of those singers that are going to be performing at that institution will eventually have skyrocketing prices when they get to the bigger houses. So they're trying to reduce costs. They're trying to do this, and they deny that they're in bad financial situation. They deny all of this. These are the statements that we've gotten: deny, deny, deny. And I've asked for specifics because there's no financial reports. The Washington Post has reported that they don't have not released financial reports, And this is a non-for-profit organization. Non-for-profits are supposed to be releasing because they're not necessarily for-profit, so therefore they're supposed to. We haven't seen financial reports. When we do see financial reports, hopefully we can see that
There's more to
they're,
discuss. Yeah.
yeah, more to discuss. And maybe, they have said that they are the most transparent administration ever. So I'm hoping that that transparency does come out and that we're able to see those financial reports. And maybe, we'll see that they are booming and that we can, and that maybe all these reports that have been said are fake, as they've multiple times suggested. But until we see those financial reports and until we actually see something, and I hope that at some point that we're able to have a nice conversation with the executive director or with someone who actually is part of that, to be able to actually understand what exactly is going on. Because as of now, there's no transparency towards this.
Right. And that leads us into the other story that we wanted to discuss that was pretty much fresh today, which is
Yeah.
that the Kennedy Center has displaced the Washington National not the sorry,
National
the
Symphony
National
Orchestra.
Symphony Orchestra for a couple of weeks because this December the FIFA World Cup draw is set to take place, and according to I think it's the Washington Post,
The
you said
Washington Post, yeah.
FIFA's getting the center for free. They're not renting it out. They're just
Yep.
getting it, being gifted it. Meanwhile, the National Symphony Orchestra, which has been calling the Kennedy Center its home for 50 plus years, has to move and find a different venue for those performances. Now, the Kennedy Center administration has pushed back on that report, claiming that among a lot of other things, the reporters are liars or something to that effect, that they shouldn't do journalism in the dark and that they didn't get the appropriate sources and that FIFA is paying a lot of money or whatnot.
Multi-million
Let
dollars.
multi-million dollars. They didn't release a specific amount. Now, what exactly did the Washington Post's report articulate about this
The
situation?
Washington Post articulated that they're getting the Performing Arts Center for free, and that due to that, they're having to have postponed concerts or relocate concerts from the National Symphony Orchestra. There was a concert that was scheduled for December. I actually have those dates. I think it was December 2nd and 3rd that the National Symphony Orchestra was doing. Apparently, it was a concert with Camilla Nyland, and that's been moved to March. And the Home Alone concert is being moved to the Anthem. And that's actually on the website now. They did report that the FIFA is paying for their production costs, the telecast and this and that, but in the documents that they received in the contract, they're not paying a specific fee for the rental. And now, according to the rental rates that are on the website of the Kennedy Center, it's 39,000 per day for the concert hall and 18,000 per day for one night for the Eisenhower Theater. And those were not actually in the contract that and in the paperwork that the Washington Post obtained. We've reached out to the Kennedy Center. They gave us Richard Grinnell's tweets, which we just mentioned. I've asked for specific information about how much the rate is, how much money there is. I've also asked about what journalists he was talking about, because he said that the arts journalist was not on the byline, but there are two journalists that are accredited. One is the sports and the other one is the arts. So I've also asked which journalists he's talked about. That he's talking about in this. And I've also asked for specifics when the Kennedy Center has shifted and postponed shows, because he did also say that they never canceled shows. We got that. But he's also said that the Kennedy Center has shifted shows. So I want to know what shows those have been shifted due to other things that they've maybe had to do. And I'd like that specificity, because I think it's really important. Because I think when you give a statement, in my opinion, those statements should have specificity and clarity. Otherwise, anyone can push back on vague statements.
Otherwise, vague statements can be, you can say whatever and it's true, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
that's the kind of where we live right now. Not to go
Exactly.
that direction, but I do think that just again, the Kennedy Center is, if you had any doubts about the Kennedy Center as a political organization or as having some sort of, we've known about the FIFA situation. We know that the World Cup's going to take over our lives next year in the summer. You're going to see it everywhere. You're going to hear about it everywhere. You're going to see it on every screen plastered across, New York City, Times Square. You're going to see it's going to take over. And obviously, this administration is putting a lot into it. And the tourism could benefit the arts. In this particular case, that is not benefiting the arts. It's taking away from them. Because even if you have to postpone a concert, people plan things ahead. Not every A lot of people go and plan concerts in advance. They don't, especially in classical music world, especially in the opera world. Going on whims is not necessarily structured into that.
Right,
And pushing something into March it's a significant time period.
right.
People live lives. People might be available in December because of the holidays, but not in March, different time periods. So, it is unfortunate. If it is true that people didn't pay the rental fee, that also tells you something about, again, the Kennedy Center is reported by this administration have been failing financially and been on the tailspin. And if suddenly you're taking away its rental fees and giving FIFA the money to basically the free reign to do things without paying rent, you're still taking away from the Kennedy Center in a way. Even if presumably that will long term benefit in other areas of the industry or the other areas of the market and the economy, but you're taking away something very specific for an arts organization that's dependent on that long term. So, and it's for a couple of weeks. It's not just a few days. It's a
Yeah,
couple of
it's for
weeks that
three
this is
weeks
happening.
according
So,
to the Washington Post. It's 3 weeks. So we'll see what happens, but
yeah,
it is kind of unfortunate. And I do say that performers, these are not pop singers that get paid millions of dollars, and even then I don't think they want to postpone their concerts, but they
right.
can have
That's the
the
other variable. That's the other variable. You, Camila Newlands, what's your schedule look like that you have to shift everything to March? These are schedules planned years in advance, and suddenly
yeah,
the FIFA World Cup was planned years in advance too.
yeah,
So, they should have known and they should have considered it. And obviously, like I said, oh gosh, the Kennedy Center is no longer just a performing arts organization. It is a political propaganda machine for the current administration because the current administration runs it. It's
yes.
not divorced from the government, it's part of the government. So, anyways, I'll end it there. Let's shift to our opera of the month, which will be an opera that we're going to see in a couple of weeks.
Yes, our opera of the month is Andrea Chenier, which, if we're going to talk about politics, there's another political work about the French Revolution, about a French revolutionary and a person who goes to the guillotine for his political beliefs, and
Yeah.
also and then has amazing some of Giordano's best music. I absolutely love this work. We're going to see it with Piotr Bekchawa and Sonia Yoncheva. This will be their second Giordano work at the Metropolitan Opera following Fedora.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting. I've never seen this work.
Really?
I have never seen this work.
I
I
had seen it. Didn't we see it? Because I was thinking about that, and I said we saw it when Placido Domingo did it last at the Met.
Oh, we did. Yes, of course.
That was
But
the
I don't
first time we ever
remember.
saw it. I exactly. I was thinking the same thing. I don't really remember that performance all that well, but that was
Yeah,
that was the first time. And then I saw it when they revived it with
yeah.
Marcelo Alvarez, Sondra
And Patricia.
Radvanovsky.
No, I think it was Patricia Rachette.
Oh, it was Patricia Rosset, right?
Yes.
But it was, yeah, I remember I enjoyed it. I've listened to plenty of recordings. I have a very big soft spot for Franco Corelli, Renata Tebaldi recording.
Okay.
Um, I just think it's such an incredible, and especially because of the way that it's an opera that, for example, a tenor like Corelli, it suits him really, really
Yeah.
well. The way that he sings, the way that he phrases, the intensity that he brings to a role. Another recording that I really love is the Maria Callas recording
Yes, of
with,
course.
I believe it's with Mario del Monaco.
Yes.
Um, I don't necessarily love Mario del Monaco, but I love her. And obviously, everyone knows that the famous Dama Morta recording, which has been immortalized in the film Philadelphia. And it's one of the greatest interpretations of that role, that aria specifically, ever committed to any record. But I'm excited to see this opera. I'm excited to see this cast. Bichawa is a great tenor. Last time I saw him, unfortunately, I didn't have an amazing experience in Aida, but he tends to do something special with these Verismo works. Adriana Couvreur, he was amazing. Fedora, he was amazing. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he does with an opera that's really very tenor centric.
Yeah.
in which the soprano kind of steals the show with her aria. And Sonia Yoncheva, last time I saw her in Queen of Spades, was quite spectacular. So I'm excited to see this cast.
Yeah, I mean, for me, there's a couple of recordings that, besides the Maria Callas recording, I have to say Renata Scotto singing with Plácido Domingo. It's a recording that I remember we listened to a lot in the car. Her La Mama Morta is fantastic, and I think the chemistry between the two of them, I've always admired. I mean, you watch them on any recording, and you hear them on any recording, and there's something special happening between the two of them. And I also really love two video recordings. There's the one that I remember seeing for the first time was Maria Guleghina and Pavarotti from the Metropolitan Opera, which this is the production that they're going to be seeing. And I loved Maria Guleghina, and hearing her voice, that lush and that big tone that she had. And Pavarotti is always special to see, because he's not the most amazing actor, but he just communicates so much with his voice, and he's just acting with his voice. I guess that's what makes him so special in that recording. And a few years ago, the Teatro La Scala opened with Andrea Chenier, and that was a very, very amazing recording. Anna Netrebko, UC Vevasov was, I think, is making his debut or not. I'm not remember. And Luca Salsi. And I remember just watching the recording. It's really special to see the chemistry between Luca Salsi and Anna Netrebko in their big scene before La Mama Morta, and also his big aria as well. So there's a that scene I remember in that recording is spectacular. So there's a lot of like moments in this work that I absolutely adore. And I think the arias, yes, you mentioned are special, but the two duets between Magdalena
Yes,
Di Coni and Andrea Chenier, for me, are probably some of the biggest
definitely.
highlights. Everyone talks about the last one, but the last duet, because it's monumental and it's amazing. But the first duet in the second act is
Yeah,
just,
no, it's beautiful. It's
it's
beautiful. It builds.
beautiful.
It builds the
It builds
crescendo at
so
the
much.
end, that glorious melody. Yeah, no. I listened recently, like I said, the Devaldi Borelli recording. I think it's a live performance, and it was
Yeah,
spectacular.
it's
That
really
duet
good.
was spectacular.
So,
So yeah, so that's
yeah,
gonna wrap it up for this episode of the Opera Wire podcast. Once again, we'd like to thank Daniel Gomez, our producer, for making this happen, and for all of you who are here listening. We really enjoy. We're really growing into this project, and we're really looking forward every month to kind of bringing you new stories. And we're gonna be changing it up in a couple of months as
yeah.
we move into 2026. So stay tuned for that. And as always, thank you so much. Is there anything you want to add, Fran?
Yeah, I mean, next month we're gonna have a really special podcast. I think it's gonna be really interesting as we wrap up 2025. It's been a great year, and I think there's gonna be some really interesting things that we're gonna discuss next episode. So, thank you so much. Please follow us on all our social media channels to catch the latest news on OperaWire.
We'll see you at the opera.